Welcome to selfdiscoveryradio.com, where the orchard of wisdom is just ready for picking. We celebrate your why, the journey that you've taken that inspires someone else. We support your services, we support your story. Come and be our guest, become a host, be an author with us. Come and see what we've got. Our next show is... Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Ignite Your Heart and Soul. I'm your host, Sara Troy, and my guest is Mila Popovich. We're going to be having her on the ecology series under the Let's Get Synced. You'll hear her in October and all the very profound things that she is doing. But today, this is a personal show, and it's about her beautiful performance of dance, which is art in itself. And we're going to be talking about maybe how the two merge, but also about the freedom, the love, the ignition of heart and soul in her dance, in her performance, in this beautiful art form, and exactly how they do merge, because it isn't... I've got a mute all of a sudden. I hope that isn't a mute on my side. But it is about expression. It is expression of love, an expression of who we are, an expression to invite other people. And this is what it's about. And this is what she does on both sides of her coin. So who is she? She's the founder of Evolving Leadership Program, consulting community for transformational leadership on the scale of personal excellence, organizational development, systemic innovation, to planetary pathfinding. She also develops potential of individuals, businesses, communities for superior performance, attuning them to the universal life-supporting principles in conjunction with the emerging social trends to maximize return on conscious contribution. In other words, she does a lot. And yeah. Yes. So this is just one part of it. Now the glasses come off because I don't have to read anything. So I've seen your pictures, and we're going to be showing those up through as we go. But I don't think people actually understand that art and business do go together, don't they? And then when you can express yourself in an artistic way, it allows you to express yourself in business. But as this, we're going to merge in the other, what you do, and invite people to come back in October to listen more fully on that. But the artistic self, when you look at these pictures, folks, you're going to know she is a work of art in her movement. Hello, Mila.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Sara. It's absolute thrill and joy and honor to join this field of friends and community of conscious seekers and conscious finders as well. Mm-hmm. I'm pleased to be here with you to co-create the moment, to play a little bit with something that we have forgotten a long time ago, the art of dialogue. Mm-hmm. And I am absolutely grateful to you, Sara, for initiating something very unique where you gather us for your convening power, for us to come together, share our life stories, as every perspective is precious, and there cannot be totality of truth without all of our and every single one of us participating, and our full participation.
It's the ingredients of life, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And to have the full picture of life and full delight of being, mm-hmm. We all need to participate, and we all need to share our precious experiences. Mm-hmm. So I just absolutely love how this great life's design connected us and brought me here and enabled you and inspired you and ignited your heart and soul mm-hmm. to create this kind of programming, to broadcast a particular kind of intention and invitation to people to come and join in what you are creating as a unique community. It's my absolute joy to be here.
Delight to have you. And I think people forget that life is about creativity. It is about expression. And, you know, people like to divide and box and separate things and file them away in different compartments. And we can have different compartments of life, but there should be always a flow between one thing and the other. And if we want to address the whole of us, you know, the whole of who we are, you know, you're not going to go and into a UN meeting dancing, but you are going to bring that same spirit into it, aren't you? And I think this is what's so important in life, is what is your expression? What is your ingredient that you're sharing, your spice of life? And how are you sharing it with other people in a way that does ignite them? Maybe just to ignite them into listening to you.
Mm-hmm. That's very poignant what you're saying. Tracing the fine lines of boundaries that are bendable and breathable boundaries, depending on who you're speaking to, the environment that you find yourself in, while at the same time having the finest of discernment in what kind of language to speak in the moment, so you can access people not so much for that which you will say, but for that which should be moving within them. And it's a delicate and discrete skill of its own. And I'm still learning, as you can imagine, from situation to situation. And life is so vast,
yes,
so vibrant and so vast, that always brings you into new experiences that will make you meet yourself at the limit, and having to push through that, or maybe not push, dance through that.
yes,
or find finer and finer ways to show up for yourself authentically, in order to be able to show up for the world actively and to make that contribution. So totally agree with you. And it's like I said, continual process of refinement, both on the question of discreteness and discernment and finesse, while at the same time, making sure that the inner fires are burning and not diminished by that fear, or just a perfect proportion between, subtleties and also unleashing your powers. And what I have found, and I have traced that both academically and artistically, the way we have defined our subjectivity. There was the period of time, especially when we were socially immersed in clans or tribes or societies, or and there was constantly this notion of unified, if you say, the lionized grand self. There should be typically one grand figure emerges, that is the legendary epic leader, and then we all think we should be that solid and unified. And as we evolved, and as we have been devastated, and we'll most definitely speak of devastations and how we can prospect them for delight of being in creation. As we have civilizationally and as a species evolved into greater powers and greater capacity to self-destroy,
yes,
by full measure, self-evolve and self-destroy, what has happened is that we have experienced World War I, for example, and then you'll see the reflection in art of the fragmented self, the shock to the human spirit and to the soul. Was so tremendous that we realized our capacity for massive destruction. That then both our self-image and self-representation by default ended being cubistic, if you will, abstract, but because we were baffled by our own powers that were terrifying us. And now I think we're going into the next wave. We're going into the
Actually,
next
before
wave.
we go into the next wave, I want to really hit on this a little more, because the next wave is what we're going into. But I think because we've fragmented ourselves so much in this last century because of wars, it's not, you would think after the First World War and the devastation, that why would anybody want to have another war? Yet 20 years later, there we were, in even a worse war. And then you would think we've learned from that, the loss, the disconnect, the fragmentation, the pain. Now, we all know what it's like when something happens to us that disappoints us or hurts us, and how pain can rip us apart. Well, if you've got a war after war after war in one century that is killing so many people and ripping people apart, basically, we have never had time to heal. We've never had time to put ourselves back together. And the answer to pain for so many people, as we see evident, is to lash out and cause more pain to someone else. So we seem to be constantly looking for another war, another reason to hurt someone else. But we're not taking any ownership over our own pain and our own healing, because that's the only way we're actually going to stop all this devastation constantly from happening, is healing of ourselves, our hearts, our spirits, our minds, our souls, because that's what we bring to the table in the form of peace, which is our next wave. But if we don't address the pain now, we're just going to keep on conflicting and imposing that pain on others.
And that is because we avoid it.
Yes.
And that is because we will not, it is easy to polarize our psyches and our politics, to find the threat in somebody to whom we point and say that's the enemy,
Yes.
with all the justifications that go with it, without then addressing, owning our participation in the conflict to whatever extent that is. We are participating, otherwise we wouldn't be locked in like that. And then the next stage, we tend to numb and suppress that, rather than, like you say, address and heal.
Yeah.
And one of the greatest healing means is art.
Yes.
In many communities here where I reside in Denver, in Colorado, and it's a very, very and increasingly more vibrant and diversified environment, cultural environment, we go to what we sometimes call poetry churches, where people are invited in an open mic, open stage space to come tell stories, sing, dance, speak, anything what it is that they want to offer.
Yes.
Of self-expression. And we always say, art saves lives.
Yes.
Because you can't fight when you're dancing.
Right.
In capoeira, Brazilian capoeira showed us that very quickly it becomes into a sensual dance. Even the opposition and the conflict is actually used, is practiced, like the tension is used and practiced to become this sensual, meaning, feeling, co-creative dance exchange.
We see a lot of dance. We see a lot of dance that can start off with an angst. It's a dance, of the warrior, or the dance of the frustrated, or the dance of, wanting to really express. We see this a great deal in Canada, hip hop and other type cultures. But as you said, once you get into the dance, into the form of expression, you can't help but bring the sensuality out. And that's not sexuality. The sensuality is that you're tapping into your senses, and you're allowing all of your senses to have an expression, to really speak. And that dance becomes less to do with the anger and more to do with the tapping in and the expressing those senses out there. So whether we see a dance that looks like it's angry or a dance that looks like it's love, it's all that beautiful sensual senses coming out in expression that allows people to spend their emotions. Do you find that so many people are suppressing the emotions instead of finding an outlet to spend them?
Exactly. And we tend to be locked in one expressive register, as if there's a uni language of exchange, then
limited at the moment.
And it's typically one directional. Yeah. And then, we qualify these people and so, those people qualify us. It's us and them, it's dichotomies, it's polarization, it's threats and heroes, enemies and heroes. I mean, in all of that, art has actually ventured into the psychological landscape to truly explore the multifacetedness of every single one of us, and the light and dark streaks intertwined, right? That are there meant to be explored and integrated and transmitted creatively forward for the sharing of the wealth and richness of being, the wealth of experience and richness of being. And when you practice that, and it always unavoidably has to start from a particular way of thinking, self-reflection. When you are preoccupied that way, to find, to prospect and bring out all those creative boons from the depth of your being, it's hard to engage another. Yes. And it's hard to engage another in a hurtful way, because the deeper you go, should I say, the deeper you go into the intimacy with yourself, the more profoundly do you sit there to see what emerges. The more universal being you actually emerge. Right. Because you in yourself trace the impulses and the forces that are everywhere in the world, and nothing that is human can be strange to you or foreign to you. And the deeper you go, the wider you can connect, and the more universal you emerge, realizing that your profound uniqueness is universally extended,
Yeah.
and that there are so many beautiful life forms and beings
Yes.
that are called to do the same. And art does that. Art calls you back to your own being, even as it reflects a greater social reality or cosmic representation. It always, time and again, calls you back into the depth of your being, and that's it's tremendous, tremendous value. Because what is there? What other way is there to truly, truly assess your own needs and aspirations?
Yeah.
Needs as these fundamental, vital things that need to be met, and aspirations that are never ceasing inner flame that always wants to reach higher.
Yes.
And it's impossible. We are stretched on that spectrum of being, and it's impossible to assess that if you don't go in there with means that are profoundly introspective, that are sensing and feeling, like you said, and activating multiple senses at the same time.
It's
and
beingness,
no
isn't
other
it?
does it.
Yeah, it's beingness. You know, we're as human beings doing. We're constantly doing. You know, we're chasing. We're always looking externally for everything, as to appease us, as to please us. But when we go internal and step into our beingness, and we understand the beingness has no borders. It may have some energetic boundaries, but it has no borders. And it is in the beingness of the ignition of the soul, the heart, the spirit, and the mind, in its flow, just like in your dance. When you're in dance, you're in beingness. You are being all of your senses. You are being your expression. You are being your connection, your universal, your divine connection. And in that, you are expressing and also inviting others, because through your language of dance, you are igniting something in someone else where they start feeling the movement within them. You know, come alive, switch on, and sometimes perhaps maybe even for the first time. They've lived such rigid lives of, I'm a very good doer, but they've never expressed their beingness because they've never allowed that light to come on inside of them. So art is an invitation, isn't it? It's an invitation to light and ignite something within you and allow you to step out of expectation and into expression, because that's your self-discovery.
That's so beautifully said, Sarah. That kind of invitation to the self and to the world, and into this love play. Love play. That's such a significant thing. And I will tell you, I mean, to vouchsafe for how I have come to this stage in my life. What are the pathways that have taken me here? And in the continuous becoming, but at this particular moment, as we meet and we meet with our viewers and our audience, you know, I've known of war, and I've shared that before with you. I come originally from former Yugoslavia, which is at the intersection of East and West. Specifically, I come from the region called Montenegro, which used to be a kingdom of its own. And as I explained before, I usually see it as a lotus of its own. It's a tiny country, exceptionally beautiful, and it has these deep, muddy historical roots, like a lotus flower. And then I have experienced civil wars in the former Yugoslavia, and it is impossible to address that topic right now, because I'm sure we will address that in the other conversation on the ecology of society, because we're talking about the ecology of soul and self right now, and we'll connect them, but to go into depth would be a whole other thing. So we're through the civil wars, and then I immigrated into the US by some fantastic and very unusual set of circumstances. and ended up here in Denver in beautiful Colorado. So I came from one set of mountains, the Rocky Mountains here, and experienced a continent. I mean, this is not a country. This is an entire continent, and the vastness of this landscape literally had my neural pathways burst. You know, to begin with, from that, just the intricate infrastructure, the exquisite roads and everything that I could get on in a car and for hours drive through this incredible landscape had tremendous I should say psychosomatic shift, generated psychosomatic shift. So I was able to walk forward with this double vision, this kind of a micro perspective at the profound intersection of East and West, and then this vastness of a new democracy. And it's very kind of, should I say, aggressive energy exertion in the world in multiple ways, while I also came from Highlanders that were aggressive freedom fighters in their own ways. So very, very unusual blend that really my academic work, which I love learning, and every human being loves learning. We're learning beings. It's just the education most of the time is not fit for what we actually need. So due to the love of learning, but also therapeutically, frankly, I embarked on the course of studies in the graduate studies and in literature, film studies, and then, you know, comparative literature and humanities as this kind of overarching perspective on the civilizational development and history of ideas and human accomplishment. So I needed that perspective. I needed to find myself in the academic environment in order to sift through, to make sense out of all of these experiences and sift through all of that. So there's profound trauma, collective trauma that I carried forward here. And then I was privy to something that was a reversal of that. I walked into a society that was highly protected, highly sanitized, highly ordered, highly regulated, and there were tremendous comforts that came with that. And yet, I have seen many, many alienated, isolated, suffering human beings.
Yes.
You know, I realized that sometimes when there's collective suffering, while it may be apparent how terrible it is, there's profound solidarity that emerges from it.
Yes. And
to suffer in isolation, alone, alienated, when the whole world looks like it's perfectly fine and you constantly question yourself, something wrong with me while the rest of the world is perfectly well, I think that that's more terrifying than anything else. And
I think this is also what's actually having such an enormous effect on the world right now, is that there is so much disconnect from self, and there's we have more diseases are being created through stress, and more people are in stress, de-stress. So diseases are coming about from it because we don't know how to handle that stress. And I think it's just everybody's on overload, which of course media has a lot to do with the way they sensationalize everything. But, you know, it's also, I think people are kind of like, I know I don't want this anymore. And I know that we have to do A, B, and C to move forward, but I'm really feeling rather paralyzed or stressed out about it because I don't know what to do and I feel alone. But then you've got the next person's making the same statement. So why are we not saying it together and saying, well, why don't we together put our heads together and look at de-stressing ourselves? But do you find that such a huge society stressed out but become isolated because of it?
Absolutely. And one of the, again, not only has the art been this tremendous way of exploring the self, but the art has been the greatest connective fluid and means for communities.
Yes.
We know that from former societies, but even now. So what I have seen, as I mentioned before, in these gatherings in the art communities here in the Santa Fe Art District that we have, or all over the city, for example, here, or back at my original home, people are converging. People are coming together around social issues and to self-express. And art has that other function to be the community connector, to be the ether, that ethereal perfect means that threads heart to heart and
Yes.
connects heart to heart on a profounder level than anything else. And where I was going with the story, because I'm kind of correlating my own personal sense of the tragic and of collective destruction, and relating back to what we said was the civilizational stage of fragmentation. And I have equally in my life, on my path, experienced the same thing. So through the arts and through the philosophical pursuit, spiritual, philosophical, and artistic pursuit, all of those parts, all of those aspects to myself, I ended up calling to each other into a council of being.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's something profound about being able to approach trauma.
Yes.
To it, not shun it, not numb it, not medicate it, not overwork it, not distracted, but to sit with it and call it also to the table, to the gathering of the self, to the council of the self. And what emerged is a new vision. There's a turning around of the perspective, a transformation of the perspective and of being, consequently, that I see now was the most beneficial thing that has happened, most integrating and beneficial thing that has happened in my life. And again, to correlate back to society, I am seeing that we have moved to that next stage.
Yes.
Where the subjectivity is defined as diversified self, engaged in continual self-creation. So that we have now to basically unpack that, what I meant by it, that what is seen before as fragmented, I am realizes multiplied the self so radically that it gave me opportunity to have multiple lives in return.
Right.
And by the same means, to authentically recreate a self-identity by playing out, expressing all different aspects of myself. And if you think about it, if you kind of go back to what you were saying about the modern malaise, if you will, of isolation, and you also mentioned, reacting to expectations. It's a reactive life. There's a set of norms that is put forth, and they have their own value up until a certain point, some regulation. But you mentioned that, you said that there's expectation. It's a reactive life. This is a proactive life.
Right.
Where you go out there, explore yourself, express yourself, offer the gifts to the world and share of yourself with the world. And in return, what's given back to you is this really enlivening, igniting, reigniting, revitalizing sense of multiple self-expressions. And as you know, and as you pointed out, in this modern condition, we feel that we have to be a particular framework, suited up, as I say, to perform certain profession, to be behaving certain way, to be sexually, spiritually, socially, intellectually, emotionally oriented a certain way.
Right.
And instead, what ends up happening, there's a tremendous oppression to the soul, tremendous impoverishing of the being, because there's tremendous potential that is not being expressed and realized. What we tend is, the consequences, the diseases and the dysfunctions that we have, because it's only expected. Soul is always, the spirit is always greater than the circumstances in which we are. And then what happens is there's an internal rebellion that happens, and then what we end up doing, we keep shuttling, between these provisional landing places, and we feel unsettled, and yet repeatedly
Whoops. We have a little freeze here, folks. Stay with us. Hopefully she'll be back in a second.
And in this area of your life, you run to that, but in an addictive escaping way, instead of saying, I have multiple lives, I have multiple aspects of myself, and I will use every domain of my life, every stage, if you will, to give of myself so that I can meet multitude of life in return. Right. Because that's how it expands.
It's flowing from one aspect of yourself to the other. You know, we all get to wear many hats. It's like, you know, we wear different clothes every day, right? You know, and it's because that particular outfit is either for the occasion, or it's an expression of how we feel today. When we don the same outfit like a uniform, regimented every day, and we live our life very regimentally, we don't allow ourselves to step into our other expression. You know, we're conforming. And I think what we're doing right now is bucking against the conform requirements and saying, but I'm feeling stifled, I'm feeling repressed, and you can only repress for so long before there's an explosion, an ignition of retaliation. And what we're seeing, I think, right now is a great deal in society, which we'll bring up a lot more in the next show, is people wanting a voice. And they're wanting to be heard. And the thing is, you can't be heard if you're not first speaking with self. It's know who you are and all your beautiful aspects of you. You're not a one-dimensional person, and you're a person that needs to have a core center of truth and being, and allow your different expressions of self to be wherever the platform is at that time. And this, oh yes, but I can't, or what will people think of me, or, you know, nobody else does that, you know. And we've got to really delete that kind of dialogue, isn't it? And we have to form a different verbiage with ourselves and saying, you know, why can't you do that? I feel I really wish to do that, and I want to follow that. I want to see where it goes. I want to explore me. I want to express me. I want to extend me. And as long as I do it with integrity with self, I will do it without offense towards others. If others cannot receive me in this light, they are unable to see me. Move on. And keep moving on until you find someone who sees your light and you see their light. I think we're so busy looking for approval. What will people think? What's the approval that we deny ourselves who we are and what we're meant to be, and the fact that we are meant to be fluid creatures constantly exploring.
Fluid creatures. That's such a powerful expression. Thank you, Sara. Fluid creatures. If you think of your own being right now, we move on a scale, on a spectrum of being: physical, vital, and emotional, mental, social, spiritual aspiration. So we operate on an axis of being, on a scale. I like to use the word scale because I would always like to come back to the musical scale so that I can call on harmonizing.
Right.
Harmonizing of being along that scale. On another axis, you're socially connected with so many that it's just baffling how especially with these finer ethereal means of digital age, we have the capacity to really connect even across the broader spectrum of regions and peoples and beliefs and spaces. I mean, travel and all of that. We are meant to play and dance along the scale, along those scales.
Yes.
And what I'm signifying here is just a powerful, poignant, painful, but absolutely brilliant human condition of being stretched, crucified along the time-space continuum. And that's what art time and again explores, that crucifixion, that stretch, that if we're speaking in the Judeo-Christian context, but in any context, we can switch the metaphor to speak about the same human coordinates of being.
Yes.
And to realize that we're repeatedly doing that. And art has the courage to equally engage immortality, Total finality. Art is a total, this gorgeous, gorgeous dance. Art is the immortal dance with death.
Yes. And has been since the beginning of time. You know, it doesn't matter how much you want to conform it, restrict it, whatever. It has always been that fluidity that is within us, because it is who we are, right? We're moving all the time, whether we're moving artistically or in dance or in expression. You know, our hands are moving, our faces are moving, our bodies are moving when we talk. We need to move. You know, whether you're in the sports or in the dance or in the song or in the meeting or in the writing, we're constantly in that fluid movement. And by allowing that fluid movement, we are connecting. We are igniting with our frequency, with the higher energies, with the higher plane. It doesn't matter what your God is. We are divinely connecting and expressing ourselves. And we really do need to find out, where is our voice? With you, it is with dance. We're going to see some of your beautiful pictures in a moment. For some people, it's song. For some people, it's writing. For some people, it's speaking.
All of it.
It doesn't, or all of it. And the whole thing is, just because you do one thing doesn't mean that's the only thing you should do, right? It's how else can you take your dance, your art expression into what else you do in your life.
Arenas.
Other arenas. It's not just meant to be, you know, well, one compartmentalized. And I think this is, you see time and time again, especially in the artistic forms of sport, you know, like figure skating or this or that. They have been so regimented in their training. And then they reach a certain peak and it's like, I just can't do this anymore, because they lost the connection to the art. And this is something that's so important.
That's a very powerful point. That's a very powerful point. I just want to connect a couple of things that you mentioned. And that is when you said, I'm still stuck on fluid being. It's just such a beautiful, it created a kind of, it stimulated a vision, a visual reaction in me when you said that. And I've seen a dance in my mind as we dialogically created this moment. So I want to mention this idea of, again, this symptom of running away to different areas in our lives, or escaping, or, you know, and the notion that you brought in of excuses, justifications, explanations, valid reasons, practicality that stops us from exploring that, so that we're living a continually reactive life. You know, when you realize that that field opens up and that you can be those different things, and not just that you can be, because it's highly therapeutic, it's highly honoring the nature of our being and our potential, but it is also exceptionally healing. And that, furthermore, that you tend to excel more in one arena, because this other one domain here is nurturing it. And that's what you started with when you said, when you're walking into UN and to deliver a speech at a scientific conference, or, you know, on the policy making meeting, or immobilizing social movements.
Right.
It is actually, the dancer is still there.
Yes. The dance is in the presentation of your words. It's in the rhythm. It's in the song, right? Because all you're doing is taking from physical movement to the verbal dance.
To a different register.
But you know, it's like somebody is going to just deliver something on one note. You know, how are you going to listen to them? You're already asleep before they got to the end of the sentence. But when somebody speaks in a rhythm and in a dance and an expression and in a passion, you know, somebody starts feeling the vibe, feeling the groove, feeling the frequency, and they're getting into this. And now they're engaged and they're truly hearing, and it's ignited with their rhythm. That's the invitation, is taking that rhythm of life into everything you do.
And let us remember a couple of things on the universal level, on the macro perspective. Nothing in the universe is still.
No.
Everything vibrates.
No.
Everything vibrates. So you mentioned life is movement.
Yes.
But also think about how we should be healing more. Movement is life. By more movement. That's on the macro scale. We have to be scientifically conscious that life flows, and it's fluid.
Yes.
And it has to flow. And then we have to think where conceptually, culturally, personally, we are stifled, or when we're not flowing, where all of the channels are not open enough. And the second thing that we have to remember, that I always say to people when I teach dance, because I will get all these justifications, explanations. I don't have a rhythm. I don't have this. I said, if you have a body,
Yes.
you're a dancer.
Yes. You haven't just discovered it yet. That's all. You've been contained.
What the medium and what the form is going to
Yes.
be like, that's
Right.
different. You have a
Yes.
body, you're a dancer. And I want people to claim that. And I want to address something, you mentioned something super, super powerful. This, there is something absolutely admirable about discipline and people coming to their particular form and skill with discipline, learning and execution and all of that. But you're saying something very profound. That's acrobatics.
Yes.
Can slip easily into acrobatics, not necessarily refined
Expression
art,
of art.
which
Yes.
is necessitating fluidity of expression,
Yes.
which necessitates certain feeling, vulnerability to not know, even as you are master and expert at something. So that's why, particularly in saying dance,
yes,
or in other performing art forms, they say you get to improvise only when you've already mastered everything. So you let go of the learning. You apply all of your learning and let go of your learning to be able to jump into the flow of the art of your choice and let it speak back to you as you were trying to speak to it, learning to speak to it through your baby steps of mastering the form.
I call that the knowingness. And the knowingness is that you have the knowledge, but how to use that knowledge is wisdom. And that comes in the form of knowingness. And that's knowingness is something that speaks to your soul, that ignites in your heart, that speaks to your spirit and action, and your mind knows what it needs to know when it needs to know it. And in that knowingness, the wisdom of the knowledge is when you are truly immersed in the art of what you do, the passion. I know this, I must do this. This is the passion and the expression of what I need to do in this now. And the knowledge of the technique of how you did it is already there. It's already embedded in the mind. But the divine wisdom of that knowingness extracts the knowledge that is needed to know in that moment and gives you the tools in order to express the wisdom. Because when you look at dance, when you look at performers, I'm a great big follower of performance shows, of songs, of dance, and the world of dance right now is absolutely amazing. And there are a couple of young kids that are choreographing their own, and they got the highest score, 100%, and their expression. And it's because actually they're not formally taught. They have allowed themselves to express, and your breath literally is taken away by their expression. They're two young people. They're driven by the dance, and they don't even know how good they are. And that's the difference. You can have people out there that are mechanically good. Everything was perfect, but where was the connection? And then you have other people come out with that connection, their guts, their soul, their passion, and everything that they are is laid out on the ground, and it takes your breath away. And you look at it and go, I felt that. And I think this is one of the things that's missing in society today. We've forgotten how to feel. We're so stuck again in that pain, in that disconnect. Where do I belong? What do I stand for? What's my meaningful purpose in life? What's my dance? What's my rhythm? They've so disconnected, they've forgotten that first to connect to that, you've got to be allowing yourself to feel. You can't dance in your truth. You can't sing in your truth. You can't do anything in your truth until you're willing to feel your truth, because then that is your knowingness and your wisdom that will use your knowledge to express yourself.
That's tremendous what you were saying. Let me feel with you for a moment, because I have so much to say, and at the same time I want to honor what you just opened up, what you just kind of with the magic touch, just I think that the greatest issue is disconnect.
Mm-hmm.
Disconnect from feeling, disconnect from different parts of you,
Mm-hmm.
disconnect from authentic desire as opposed to,
Mm-hmm.
fulfilling an
Expectation.
expectation. When we can, when we are in discomfort,
Mm-hmm.
personal and collective, if we can feel that discomfort is this kind of unmooring, you're thrown off your bases, right? You're unmoored, you're uncorked, you are disjointed. If you can feel, and it's a total mastery. It's a total
Yes.
self-mastery that only one can do for the whole lifetime. But nonetheless, once you know, you
Yes.
cannot unknow. Once we have shared, you and I, once we have shared
Yes.
this with people, they cannot say, I know, I don't know.
Right. Exactly.
Nor can
Exactly.
we.
Yep.
Nor can we.
Ignorance is
Um,
futile. Yes.
so when you feel that
Yes.
unmooring,
Yes.
when you're thrown off the balance and you're
Mm-hmm.
losing your footing in life, if
Mm-hmm.
there's one part in you, as is that smidge of light, as that little ember at the core of your being, the little firefly, there nothing else is left but that much that carries the breath involuntarily. If you can just consciously remember that now the membrane has gotten bigger for you to move, and though it feels terrifying that you may fall flat, there's more space so that we can speak to our pain, not disconnect from it, so that we can listen to what the message is telling us about the actual source, psycho-emotional source of our discomfort, so that we can go there and their message is to be heard. And then the next level would be, or the deeper level, or the higher level, wider level, would be not only heal so as to do away with it sooner. When you go through that fine burning, fine stewing process, the alchemical process of like larvae eating your own insides in that cocoon, when you go through that, you actually look back and you say, I should have stayed there longer. I could have like a spider, woven that silken thread out of my core a little bit longer, because the next level is that the discomfort becomes your expansive field of exploration, because you're touching, you're kind of going around this unknown or devastating or whatever it is. The next level is that you understand that those are the depths of creative sourcing. That's where the messages are. That's where the next outrage, social outrage is. That's where the next scream is. That's where the next kick is. I mean, the life quickening in you happens in these spaces, womb-like dark spaces. And if you can, in the personal disasters, remember only that much, that will carry you through a long way forward. And as you were saying, an artist, a master, I think it was Picasso who said, learn rules like a master in order to break them like an artist. Continuing our discussion on, or mentioning improvisation, and we all improvise in life. We're kind of dancing.
My daughter's out all improvising here. It's the expression of her dance, right?
Exactly. So what I'm saying is, you again, just like in a relationship with pain, or on the entire emotional spectrum as well, like with anything, the relationship to one's art, the relationship to one's skill of any kind, is initially that to master. Right? And that's the level of impressing.
Right. Yes.
You go out there to prove yourself, to impress others, to get validated, to do this, and that's what you're referring to. But the artist is a very, very humble, vulnerable, raw being that has learned everything only to Socratically say, now I know that I know nothing.
But that's the beauty, though. But that's the beauty, though, is that...
And that's when you show up to inspire.
Right. The knowingness that I know in the now is all I need to know. But it shows me what I don't need, or what I don't know. for tomorrow. You know, that's the whole point. You know, here on Self-Discovery Radio TV, I've interviewed so many people who have, quote, given birth to themselves. They've gone through the whole 9-month gestation or longer of pain, of releasing, of morning sickness, you name it, breast and hicks. They've gone through the whole thing, and then the pain of giving birth to themselves. But now it is, they are in truth of who they are, their meaningful purpose, their calling, and then every single one of them said, I will go through all of that pain again to become who I am now. Because finally they're in the freedom of their truth, of their expression. They're not looking for validation or approval anymore. They're not looking for someone else to justify them. They are. And in their I am, and their perfection and the imperfection of who they are, they can now join the we are, the orchestra of life that plays the beautiful symphony that is the invitation. But we can't be a we are until we are an I am. And we have to be willing to take through that journey and set ourselves free in whatever form of art creation we are. And I know a lot of people say, oh, I'm not artistic. How do you know what you are and what you're not if you have not explored? My art is interviewing. Right? This is my art. This is my meaningful purpose. So many other people have got other forms of expression. Don't look for what will people think. I want to have you back on the show actually with 2 other people, Bellissimo and Barbara Chapois, and each one of them speak to dance in a totally different form. Barbara Chapois, it's all about the flove of life, F-L-O-V-E, no L, flove of life, yeah, I can't remember. But it's about constantly almost a distortion of body movement and expressing yourself everywhere in the moment as to what the moment speaks to you. And Bessa actually has a clinic right around the corner from me, which I discovered the other day. And it's about taking people who don't know how to express and having them just listen to the music and just letting their bodies go, letting their bodies take them and show them who they are, and not think about, well, how should I do this, but allowing the beat and the rhythm of life to set them free and become their dance. It's not about how beautiful you dance. It's about the expression of your own dance. So that will make a very interesting show with all 3 of you. But,
fantastic. I mean, and that's what it is. And every stage is necessary.
yes.
You know,
yes.
the stage where you like a child want to be at that school stage and do get your approval. We are social beings.
Yes.
We are
do you like
co-emergent.
me?
Yes. Right. We're bonded. We're bound, right. And our identities are bound to each other, and that's great. You know, but that's the stage when you tend to master a certain form to perfection. You try your best, and you come to a certain level of skills of expression that are impressive. Absolutely. And everywhere all around the world, you see people that are absolutely admired for their discipline, as they should be. But like I said, an artist is the one that is realized, through learning everything that they now know. Finally, now they know nothing.
Right.
That these are the people that are not there to impress.
No,
they're there
to express. Yes.
To inspire.
Yes.
And the difference being, to impress is to impart on another, right. And seek that response back in validating you. To inspire is actually, like you said initially, it's an invitation. It's an invitation to the very being of the person that is in the audience, so that when they leave, something moves, something is quickened inside, something, their own life is calling, their own soul is saying, see, I've been telling you this all along. They not only have something new stirring, they have all the old things speaking at the same time that we have internally neglected. And then they said, then if you really do a good job of inspiring, they walk away and say, and then they'll ask, how do I want to live now?
You've ignited their breath. So many people go around without realizing they're holding their breath. When you take the deep breath in, let it go, you suddenly become connected to breath. And you realize that breath is flow. You can't hold your breath and live. You have to breathe. You have to allow that movement by igniting that breath through inspiration. People become conscious of that breath. And through that consciousness, now can start discovering who they really are.
Would you agree that I guess I would like to, what we are trying to convey together, I think what we are saying that not only, it's not in spite of things that happen to you that you become an artist.
Yeah.
It is exactly, I mean, we spoke personal and collective issues and historical issues. I mean, it is exactly because of those things that they become the very material, the prima materia, the soul matter, out of which you weave your thread. And then, so that's one thing. It is because of everything that you have the richness of being and knowing that you become an artist. And in return, every single one of you, this is what we're saying, every single one of us and one of you is already a creator. By the sheer effect of in-breath and out-breath. You're a living organism. You're an entire microcosm in motion. It's just a matter of consciously coming back to yourself to exercise those powers, to exercise impulses, to exercise those nudges from the dream world that are your own callings to your own being. So I think what you and I are saying to your precious audience and to anybody that is converged into this space because they were pulled by some kind of calling to listen to us, that, you know, if you have an artist in front of you and these artists in front of you right now, we're just here to testify to the fact that you are, that you are. It's just a matter of activation and that ignition that you spoke at the beginning. How can I and Sara, how can we serve your dream? How can we activate your art? How can we be of service? And do let us know. I guess there's always a way to give us feedback. What can we offer from our life experience and from the moment that we share as friends and co-creators right now to you, to offer, to activate and ignite that? So like I said, sometimes when there's nothing else at your core but a little amber, you give it your breath to revive it so that you follow that little firefly, and sometimes in loneliness and isolation or doubt or demise, and you become the flame. You follow the firefly and become the flame, because flame is your nature. You are a primal element burning. It's just a matter of conscious choice. That is, choose yourself.
We are all four elements. There's generally a key one that is our key, whether fire, water, air, or water
and earth.
Thank you. I'm air. I couldn't be anything but flapping in the wind. You know, air is so very important to me, and that's the thing. You when you acknowledge which is your key one, that doesn't mean it's your only one. The thing is to find the balance within the others, to bring them up into the equation, which is really, really important. What I would love to do now is show our audience some of your pictures of your dance. So people,
and I will connect our conversation to. I'll start from a scary perspective, and I'll explain why, speaking with you on a couple of issues. Like you mentioned, the elements and balance of elements, engaging all of yourself and all of elemental forces. But the reason I think you have, you know, titled your series by using the word ignition, and I use repeatedly the word the fire in this inner temple and the flame, is I'm inviting all of us to think for a second that fire is the element, is the only element that purifies and transforms and has the capacity to change states of others.
Right.
So
we
I
can all
think
become the phoenix.
That's the power to become the phoenix, or being burned to ashes for sure. But or purify, you know, this is how we cook our food. This is how, you know, fire in the belly, fire in the soul. Fire we use as a metaphor as that element in the self, is the burning and the light of the spirit, that it has the capacity to transmute everything else, and to also carry us through the transmutation through different life stages.
Right.
So in order to connect us to my life, my modes of expressions, my modalities of being, and also to address a problem in the society that you mentioned, we come up with so many excuses, justifications, not to follow through fully with who we are, how we are, who we love, where we go, what kind of things we practice. Sometimes they sound so practical and so reasonable and so right, but only at this level of being, not on the rest of the scale. And what I've done with a group of fellow artists, we created a production about the ancient goddess Kali. And she is this fierce aspect of the mother, the fire spitting, if you will, bloody, gory, birth-like, because birth is a violent event.
Yes. Anybody who's had one knows.
It's Kali, the Indian goddess Kali, is that aspect of the great birther, the great mother, the great giver, the greater grace. It's that tough love. It's that tigress mama, that force, that creative force that grabs us by our neck like tigress mama carries her cub and says, nope, you cannot go there. You have to learn this or go there, or I'm protecting you, or I'm sending you through into the world to do your own hunt towards yourself. So she's this powerful, powerful creative force that is the exact destroyer of those egoic excuses, justifications, rationalizations of everything but being fully and more of you.
Right. Immersed in you.
I'm going to show you some images of expressing that. We have kind of reinvented the myth of Kali for the 21st century, and I look like this amorphous a being, staying somewhat true to the Indian representation, but actually pitching it into something really scary. As we have followed today the pattern of discussing trauma and prospecting that for creative process. And lives are from birth on in so many ways traumatic, and in so many ways most delightful and joyful. So I am going to show you, to start from Kali, and then I'm going to show you a series of pictures from different art expressions, and then I can come back, or I can talk about them briefly to explain why even as my life is academic and artistic and activist and all the other relations and everything, what I've realized, even when I'm in one of those domains, even that domain multiplies. So even in the academic world, I have multiple functions and associations. And in the art world, I just could not contain myself. And when I ventured out, I was absolutely fascinated by Middle Eastern dance, which is known to us as belly dance, by some strange exoticizing and kind of vulgarization of the roots of it. Because in Arabic, Raqs al-Sharqi literally means the dance of the people, folk dance, of the dance of the East. And it's deep, deep, deep roots in women's ancient knowledge. So there's something profoundly mystical for me in that dance, initiatory in that dance, that goes in the undulations, in the unique expression of femininity that came with it. And then I was also equally passionately drawn to flamenco, which is the mixed art again, from India and from Eastern Europe and from south of Spain and from Sephardic Jewish tradition to Arabic tradition. I was profoundly drawn to the place where flamenco emerged, which is the south of Spain, because that at one point historically was a place of tremendous coexistence and conviviality between Christians and Jews and Muslims and all races, dark Moors, Arabic Africans, and Western and Norwegian, strands, and all of these trends together mixed with the Roma or the Gypsy who has their pathway from Rajasthan. So the amalgamation was absolutely
Delectable.
mind-blowing,
Mhm. Yeah.
heart-expanding, and soul-bursting.
Yes.
And there's expression in that dance that is unique because people celebrate spirit. People celebrate women's character.
Hmm.
They don't celebrate prettiness. They want your power.
Absolutely.
And because of that power only grows with your age, they admire
Right.
aging women, women
Yes.
with their faces wrinkled up
Yes.
because they say,
That's
oh,
life.
you walk the earth long
Yes.
enough and your wrinkles have stories to tell. And they say, ah,
They
they bow
see
to
they
that
see the
ancient.
wisdom there, right? That's the thing, right?
So they love the spirit. They
Right.
speak of duende, the
Yes.
spirit of person, the unique
Hmm.
frequency of the person or the movement of the dance or the age as
Hmm.
well. I was blown away by this interplay of the undulating, profoundly mystical, and this powerful self-assertion in the midst of the field of life saying, come what may,
Right.
light
Right.
or demise, I can turn you into a dance.
Hmm.
And then over time, have ventured into experimental theater, also going back to some ancient myths and replaying them in unique modern ways to address the issues of the day and the multi-temporality that we live in. And also really wanted to free myself from all other forms at times, to play like you were mentioning of the other guests and the friends, of to
Hmm.
really play with time and space in the
Yes.
moment and let them play you in
Yeah.
return. And that has been a fascinating process. And it started from, after many years of performing and speaking about performance and teaching performance and dance, my own children came back. My son Luca and my daughter Mina, who are teenagers now, all grown and their own, came back to me, and they saw something that I wasn't able to see.
Hmm.
And my son one time said to me, it's time to start doing art irresponsibly.
Ah, lovely.
What
Yes.
he meant by that is that you are still performing,
Right.
because I want to see you locked up in the room
Yeah.
and by yourself doing anything you want
Right.
for you.
Right.
Because I slipped into a performer's life.
That's a,
That
yeah.
you
And
rolled
then
into it, you try to earn
yes.
it, but then you
Yes.
get stuck in it.
Yes.
And they've uncorked me, my own creation
Right.
speaking back to me,
Right.
my children reminding me, stop.
Right.
And
They're
that's
reminding you why you were doing it in the first place, right? The
so what I'm
connection.
going to do now. I am going to share the photos and tell you from which, domain that is. I would love to see if I can find the representation of the Kali, the destroyer of excuses.
Hmm. Which is something we need right now, most certainly. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm going to share the screen, and bear with me for just a second, if you don't mind. And as you can see, the meaningfully so for our discussion today, the group was called Transition Theater and still performing. I'm one of the founding members and have been a choreographer and performer there. And we were recreating the Kali myth. And believe it or not, she's known as the blood spilling,
Hmm.
ridiculing all of yours and ours excuses to be less than what we were made to be.
Right.
And if you can believe, that face right there is me.
That's some good makeup.
So I am going to go backward a little bit. You're going to find some pictures mixed. And I think it's really good to have them mixed so you can see the different faces of you, I should say. Because this is just in the dance world, what I have been. But there's endless potential here. I'm just going to go through this. This is from Middle Eastern dance that I've performed at a benefit for peacemakers in Israel and Palestine. There's always a profound story behind every of these. They're never superficial or superfluous. There's always a deep story behind this. And what you see here is a very gypsy move in Middle East. And dear friends around me, there's nothing like the life shared well with other artists.
Yeah.
So this is another part of my life. I'm a activist, or I should say artivist. And there's a big social movement called there's a big social movement started in California by a remarkable poet, Michael Rothenberg, called 100,000 Poets for Change. This is a global event taking place in more than 600 cities all over the world at the end of September, simultaneously.
Wonderful.
And people are coming together sometimes for a whole week at art events for social change. The one from when we have created it last time, as you can see in 2015, was called If Psychic Bloodlines. So following the bloodlines, the psychic bloodlines of our interconnectedness of all humanity and the interconnectedness of our whole being. The image you see here is, as you can see, a gentleman, an older gentleman sleeping on the bench, and it looks like the spirit of his child is running around in the foothills of an ancient banyan Indian-looking tree.
Beautiful.
And this picture, speaking of bloodlines, is the photo artwork of my own brother, Dr. Sasha Popovich. So there's many stories behind. This is in my Middle Eastern community, performing at a wedding, a very special wedding. I'm very honored when I'm invited to perform, because they trust me. I am not by direct bloodline Middle Eastern, but they trust that I know their culture enough to bring me to the most important initiatory events in their community. This is part of the Kali production, one of the photo shoots, as you will see.
Lovely.
And there she is again. This is me at poetry reading. This is where I'm only speaking, and speaking in tongues, if you will. This is again from Kali production, theater production. It was multimedia theater production. You see like three goddesses, these exceptional classical Indian singers in the midst of the modern production. And this is my partner here on the stage, a remarkable dancer, Alfred Smith, with whom I've created a universe here, because we are Shiva and Shakti. We are an atom, universal atom, splitting afterwards. And this is, very powerful image, I think, of feminine statue in front of a very powerful place in Denver, Capitol, where the legal powers are in force. And there was a particular festival there, which I thought was powerful integration of different domains.
Yes.
This is more of the Middle Eastern dance. This is poetry reading, where you see me barefoot and waving my arms with incredible friends and musicians in the community. Again, more theater. This was a profound experiment working with electricity, and like Nikola Tesla did, a scientist and innovator from my part of the world, and golden wings of Isis from Egyptian initiatory practices. And we had this modern production playing with electricity, media projection, and different props in an abstract dance that we've done. This is more of an iconic looking Kali. This is me doing a complete improvisation dance with a red thread. I think there's a thread line here of psychic bloodlines through all of this.
You're right, yes.
This piece was called Initiation, and it was done with transition theater. It was just an incredible experience for me, because everything was on raw in the moment, as you will see. And this was working with Veil and that initiation project as well. And this is one of my scariest. When I look at this, I remind myself this too is within me.
Yes.
As I hope you are remembering what else is within you, and that you can think what you can bring in representation. This is flamenco, the create love. You can see the power in movement. This is incredible. My longtime teacher, Maestro René Heredia, who is a legend in the flamenco world and who is performing here, the guitarist. And they're more from flamenco, where you can see the expression, facial expression in the moment is tragic and deep and unrelenting, and not shying away from coming across with truth of your being. Again, reading at that event. And that's my show for today, just to give you a samples from life force flowing
Yes.
through me, allowing. All it takes sometimes for you is to
Yes.
say yes to it.
Yeah.
I will open. I still don't know how. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know the means, but life opens up and brings you Sara into your life,
Mm-hmm.
brings you marvelous friends, brings you
Yes.
self-discovery radio, and bit by bit, pathways and channels are opening, and you feel lifted. You're gifted with forces and resources and friends to co-create with, and we need you. We
We need
need your gifts.
we need all of your gifts. The thing is I think a lot of the time I go back to the word, two words: permission, allow. We don't give ourselves permission. We don't allow ourselves to express. It still goes back to that society's conformity. And, please understand that that was a hat that was very necessary at a particular time in history. But we are in a time now where our self-expression of love, it must come from a center of love. How can you express love if you don't feel the love for you, for who you are, for what you represent, for what
For
your
your being.
contribution is, for your beingness, right? Be the love you seek. You will exude that love. You will invite that same love, and that love will resonate out. We need people to switch the channel and less into the humanoid, the droid, the sheeple following blindly, and more into taking ownership of their own lives by saying, I'm going to allow myself to be who I am, and in my self-discovery I am going to explore what my meaningful purpose is, what's my contribution, and I'm going to do it from a place of love. And if we don't step into love and kindness as our core, as our fire, as our ignition, then we're not going to follow the road that is going to bring about the peace or bring about the connection, because everything stems into that love, isn't it? Everything comes from
Exactly.
love.
I just had to round off this marvelous gathering of the hearts and minds. Um, I just thought of a little poem that would be most appropriate to be like the last words. And I would like to bring that to you.
Before you do
So
that, no, before you do that, just because I'd like to finish off with it because it would be a nice tone, but would you let everybody know how they get hold of you?
you can definitely go on to milapopovich.com, which is MILAPOPOVICH.com. You'll be able to see my profile there, people I work with, and more is coming. And you will find my email address as well as my phone number, because I do also individual consultations. I work with organizations as a coach, trainer, facilitator, motivator in different guises. And in different costumes, I perform in different fields, and I am eager to basically support your potential to grow and develop, and absolutely rooting for Sara's initiative and Sara's work and self-discovery radio. I think it's an exceptional resource that we should go to, and we can always converge here. So this was an impromptu thing that came up in our conversation, because I got really inspired and realized that there was a little poem that I wanted to share with you, because we've been speaking mostly about life in general, great historical times, powerful historical times, as well as dance and movement. But I wanted to gift you with a poem that would be about you and I and us. With a hungry heart and bare feet, I found our life as great as our capacity to feel. Dance is our birthright. In the quickening of such grace, I dared to bear the soul. Thank you for listening. And thank you, Sara, for having me and for convening all of us.
Been my pleasure, and anyone who's listening, it's their pleasure too. And folks, she is back here in October with the Let's Get Synced series under Eco Solution, talking about the change of emotional climate for climate change. And we will be going far more in depth, and actually how the arts also can bring about those changes and the emotional change. So please, you will see the link here on her page, and look out for it under the Let's Get Sync series. Thank you so much, Mila. This has been divine.
Thank you. Indeed.
And until next time, folks, bye for now. For more wonderful shows like this, please go to selfdiscoveryradio.com, podcasts, and see our lineup. And if you wish to support us, we have a funded button. Please stay tuned for our next show.